Welcome to Jesus Jazz and Dessert Wine. Our jazz selection for today is My Funny Valentine. I hope you enjoy it. My funny Valentine, sweet comet Valentine, you make me smile with my heart. Ooh, your lips are laughable, unphotographable, yet you're my favorite work of art. Is your figure less than Greek? Is your mouth a little weak when you open it up to speak? Are you smart? But don't change one thing for me. Not if you care for me. Say, funny Valentine, please stay. Because you're just one Valentine away.
Woo! Okay, you know what? I always do that, and I probably shouldn't because number one, it doesn't sound good. I mean, it sounds good to my heart, but may not be to your ears. Hey, fam, happy Saturday. I am Alexis Roan, aka Alexis Grace, founder of Truth Meets Story LLC, expanding empathy one story at a time, and host of Jesus Jazz and Dessert Wine at Vespers. Listen, I had a series of opening comments and all of these different things that I had planned. Of course, always talking about my mama. You know how she is. Hey, mama, I hope you're in the virtual pew. But I received this beautiful stole. It is the Sojourner Truth traveling stole that is being shipped around the country and donned by various female clergy in honor of Sojourner Truth. And I got to tell you, if I had known that it was in my inbox when I got to my office, my studio here, I probably would have tried to put on some like stockings or something fancy or something for the occasion, because this feels so precious. Even the casing that it came in, all of it is just so superior. It's just so so honorable. So such a beautiful tribute. And so I was feeling like my free people jumpsuit was kind of in violation of the standard. And then I pulled this, it is the Traveling Prayer for Girls. And here's a quote from Sojourner Truth. It says, "I'm going to be who I was meant to be. Thank you, God, for making me whole." All of that. All of that. I'm going to be who I was meant to be. Thank you, God, for making me whole. I feel all of that because one of the things about when I first began prepping, answering, training for my call to ministry, one of the things that I often balked against, like I just didn't want to do this. I was concerned that they were going to make me wear pantyhose and kitten heels and dresses and all of these kinds of things, and that somehow my BCBG jumper and my Free People jumpsuits and my short shorts and and I don't do tank tops because I don't do sit-ups. I don't do half tops. I mean, because I don't crop tops because I don't do sit-ups. I do Spanx. But so I didn't worry about that. But just all of the ways that I like to show up in the world based on whatever it is that I'm feeling that day. Ministry, and particularly being a woman in ministry, it felt like it was a shackle. So that is why the first company that I formed was called Unshackled Publishing. And then the second one was Unshackled Productions. And then finally, we have Truth Meets Story, LLC, expanding empathy one story at a time. All I wanted to do was be who I was meant to be. And that was to walk in a wholeness, which for me is the integrated parts of all that I am: my reverent irreverence, my love for Jesus, my love for short shorts, all of that. They just go together. So I am grateful that with this stall came this reminder that I walk in the steps of a great pioneer who said she was free to be who she was meant to be. And I am liberated to do the same. So I'm so excited to be here today. I said all that to say thank you for being here in the virtual pew. I may still crack on my mama later, but it just didn't feel like I'm not really gonna get into mama today. Mama, if you're in the virtual pew, please say hey to the people. Her name is Emma Means, if y'all see her in there. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. Today has been a good day. This has been a good week. It has been wow, just I have not done all that I had intended to do. Today, this morning, 5:21 a.m. marked the start of the new moon cycle. I've been setting intentions each month based on the new moon cycle. And so I've been up since like about 4:40 this morning, just kind of prepping for that, cleaning out my space and getting set. And it was at 5:21. I thought it was at 5:41. So by the time I started, my prayers and, all of that, I was about 20 minutes past the time of the official new moon cycle for Eastern Standard Time. But I trust that my intentions are good all the same, and that everything is working out exactly as it needs to be. Listen, today is a good day. We have two featured storytellers, and they are going to tell you a story. Each one of them, I'm calling it the worst trouble ever. Part 1 and part 2. And once you hear the stories, you will hear, you'll see exactly what I mean. What I love about their story, though, and about these two women, they are the kind of women, if I had known them when I was growing up, I would have loved to have been friends with them, but they probably wouldn't have wanted to be friends with me because they had, their dads that were there, and they had these loving relationships, and they're like, no, you can't be with that girl. And not that I was a bad girl. I mean, I was Pippi Longstocking. She wasn't bad. She was adventurous. And so it has been interesting to grow up and to build relationships with women that if we had met when we were younger, we probably wouldn't be friends because of, just how I imaged in that space. A part of that always felt like, if my dad were there, then maybe it would be different. I mean, I don't know. I think a lot of that was when in my education, they said that if you didn't have two parents in your home, that it was, quote, a broken home. But the truth in my situation is that when that dude was there, it was hella broke. When we left his ass, like, it was no longer broken. It was like, okay, now we can begin to be repaired and then to be made whole, because the catalyst for all of the drama, the chaos, is no longer a part of, the situation. So I kind of know that if he were still, like, it doesn't make sense that, like, him being there, as chaotic and as horrible as he was, would somehow make, me friends with these two women. But I will say, I envied folks who had these healthy family dynamics. And I envied the way that They just had such confidence, and they just seemed to be, just these amazing people. I didn't start to feel amazing until I went off to college, University of Texas at Austin. And it was also at that point that mom and I just really, that was when we started to talk every day. I think I've talked with her every day since college. That was when we started that whole practice of like just having a phone conversation every day. And I also had a fairly decent relationship with my dad. There was a period where he was gone, and then, we found him. We found him. And then like we had to spend every other weekend. Mom was like, look, I need a break. You ain't gonna pay child support. You're gonna at least babysit every other weekend. So that's what he did, up until I went away to college, until all of us went away to college, my brothers and my sisters and I. And so it was in one of my visits home that a situation happened. Mom had taken me on a shopping spree to Neiman Marcus. I was prepping to either graduate from college or I was prepping for internships. But somehow I got this fancy woman shopping spree. And I needed to have, a decent wardrobe to be able to show up and to represent, the brand. My mother has always been a sharp dresser. And now that I'm about to enter the corporate arena, she is buying my first set of wardrobe pieces so that I would do the same. So we go to Neiman Marcus, and the dresses that I pick are fabulous. And then we go to my dad's house, and my half sister was there visiting. And I was excited, about my shopping dresses. Like, I'm a girl, she's a girl. It's like, hey girl, come on here, let's come and check out these dresses. Like, what mama just got me at Neiman Marcus. And so she thought they were cute, and and everything was good. But maybe a year or so later, I can't remember. No, actually, I take that back. A year or so later, she died. My sister Dee Dee died. And when she died, my dad never recovered from that. But instead of his owning, that he was in need of some help and that he was not grieving properly, he just grieved improperly, which meant that he, just kind of pissed over everybody. And I was just not one to be pissed on. And so he and I had a very, fractured relationship, after that, like 1995 is when it kind of all fell apart. But prior to that part prior to the time when it fell apart, Dee Dee dies. My dad is not healing well. He's not grieving well. And then we have a conversation about the day that my mother took me on this shopping spree. And he said, I can't believe you was showing out in front of your sister. You know that her mama couldn't do that for her, what your mama was doing for you. And I'm sitting there thinking, shouldn't you be doing for all of us? Like, are you really like trying to stand for her mama? What her mama didn't do. Like, it was so bizarre to me, the whole thing. And then it just got worse. Today's stories are about the worst trouble ever. But at the end of the day, these two women were loved well by their fathers and loved well by their community and intended good for them. So while it is the worst trouble ever, my hope is that as you take this journey, you will see what grace looks like, what it looks like to not be defined by these choices, and to also celebrate all of the ways that grace is truly amazing, and it shows up in measurable ways and things in ways that we cannot, even fathom. So here's how it's going to go. Donna Schiele is going to be the first storyteller. However, I have recorded her story because she is currently starring in the Clubhouse version of The Wiz. So she had a 4 p.m. show, and then she has a 7 p.m. show. So I'm hoping that those of you after Jesus, Jazz, and Dessert Wine tonight, if you have the Clubhouse app and if you have an iPhone, that you'll go and can check her out. Excuse me. After Donna's story, Then you will hear from Teninlanimi Ayo-Ariyo. And then we will, I'm going to have a live interview with Teninlanimi after that. But as is our custom, please receive and welcome Donna and Teninlanimi as they dress their truth in story.
My father was perfectly imperfect. To me, he could do no wrong. Everything he did was right. I just loved my dad. And if he made a mistake, if he did, I didn't see it. I didn't know about it. But sometimes I feel that that is translated into how I view the men in my life. They can't do any wrong. And if they do something wrong, I share the blame in that. My dad only spanked me one time in my childhood, just once. And this is why. He had Players magazines. And Players magazines are I always say, the equivalent of Playboy magazines, but it was the black version. So my dad loved his magazines. I mean, he had the Players magazines. He collected them. He put them in plastic, like he reverenced these magazines. When I was about 7 years old, I would look at the magazines. Didn't really think much of them. I knew I shouldn't have been looking at magazines, but I didn't really think much of it. I had a neighbor. She was younger than me. She had to have been about 6. And she was a white young lady. And she'd come over to the house. And one day I showed her the magazines. Just wanted her to see them. I don't know why. So she went home. Apparently, she went home and decided to show her brother some of the poses, I guess, that she saw in the magazines when she was looking at them in my house. Her mother walks in the room. This is how I'm assuming it went, and caught her posing however she was posing. It wasn't good. And asked her, "What are you doing? Where'd you get that from?" And she was like, "Well, Donna showed me this magazine at her house, and the ladies were posing like this." So she picks up the phone. She calls my mom. My mom did not like my dad having these magazines. Let's just say this out the gate. But he still had them. I mean, she just wasn't a fan of the magazines. And he didn't have them just laying on the coffee table. I mean, he had them in places where I had to find them to get to them. But yet I could still find them. She wasn't a fan. So when the neighbor calls and says, "Hey, my daughter was over your house," which she came over all the time, but she seems to have seen something inappropriate, was on the couch posing. I thought I'd let you know. I don't know what's going on. She said she saw something that Donna showed her in a magazine. Of course, my mother is mortified. You can imagine. My mother is like, "Oh my gosh." So she's like apologetic. She says she was so embarrassed. I'm sure she was. Now that I'm an adult, I'm sure she was. So she hangs up, goes to my dad, and, tells my dad, "Donna got into your magazines. I told you to put those up, da 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 da." She showed them to Michelle, the neighbor, and her mom's calling me about the magazines. "This is why you shouldn't have these magazines in the house." So my dad, comes to me, and he's like, "You shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have showed her the magazines." I don't even think he really had too much of a conversation about it with me. He wasn't like, "Well, why did you look at them?" or anything like that. He just, came to me. He said, "You shouldn't have done that." He was embarrassed. So he gives me a spanking. I've never gotten a spanking from my dad. Like, I'm the good girl. I never got a whooping from my dad. He lays me over his lap and gives me the full whooping, Little Rascals whooping. Lays me over his lap, gives me a spanking. I mean, and it was just, it didn't even hurt. I think I was more humiliated than anything. And then that was the end of that. Never talked about it again. Years later, my mom, I talk about it with her, and she's like, "He should have got the spanking because that was embarrassing." But we never talked about it again. But I got to thinking, what did that teach me as an adult? I mean, did I show the magazines to my neighbor again? No, I learned that lesson. Now, what did it do to my neighbor? I don't know. She may have grown up to want to become a voluptuous Black woman. I don't know what it did for her. Did it make me over-sexual? I don't think so. I've never had a desire to want to be in a magazine or be a stripper or anything like that. So, I don't think it did that. Did it make me feel like I was less of a woman? Not really. I don't think I never really thought about what it did. But underneath it all, did it teach me that I share the fault of the man in my life, my dad at that time? Like, I felt like, yeah, I did something wrong, but that I share the fault in that, the blame in that. And my mom kind of solidified that by saying that. And so it's almost made me feel like I too should share the blame for something that perhaps was also my father's fault. And did I carry that into my relationships, into my marriage? Do I share the blame of things that the men in my life do wrong? Now, the story gets a little better because years later, my sister and I take the magazines that my father has collected over the years. He's collected hundreds. We had crates and crates and crates. And just maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, we decided we got to do something with these magazines. My father was getting older and sick, and he wasn't able to keep up with them, but he still had them. And at this point, we're thinking, this is like art. So we decide to do an art show. And my sister curated this art show, and she called it Reclamation. And so she took the magazines and she gave it to different artists in the city of Atlanta. And they could interpret a picture from the magazine any way that they would like to, in an artistic way. And we did an art show. And my dad was able to come to the first art show that we did for that. My sister did too. And he was able to come to the first one. And sitting there, he was looking at all this, all his magazines. And I mean, it was packed. People were packed into this art studio, pictures all over. People taking pictures. They were just, this is so beautiful. This is amazing. And he said, wow, I never thought that my magazines would turn out this way. But I'm glad he got to see that. He passed a year later after that. But yeah, that's the story of my dad and the Players magazines.
I moved to the US at the age of 9 from Lagos, Nigeria, with my family, my parents, my sister, and I. And we moved here because my parents wanted us to start over, to give us access to better healthcare, education, job prospects for our future. But we moved here alone. We had no other family in the US besides my dad's best friend. We left all my cousins, all of our friends back in Nigeria. So when we moved to Los Angeles, we started to attend a Nigerian church, and that became our family. We were allowed to play only with kids from church, no other kids from school, because our parents just did not trust them. Church was held in a hotel for many years until we gradually moved into a leased building. All of our church members had similar situations as us. They moved to the US hoping to find an opportunity to live a better life. And so they moved also without their other family. So we all became each other's substitute family. All of our parents worked really hard to make ends meet. They had jobs as in restaurants. They worked as security guards. They essentially started over in the US and left some of their businesses and their high-paying jobs behind in order to create a better life for their children. And so all of us were pretty much struggling in some of the same ways as we were growing up. And so it was a really big deal when our pastor bought a house in Palos Verdes. Now, Palos Verdes in Los Angeles is an area where it's pretty affluent. You got big trees, big streets, big houses, and a lot of white people. So our pastor was the only Black family in the neighborhood. And so all of us kids were really excited when one day his oldest son invited some of us to come spend the day at this big house. And so we asked our parents agreed, and we went there one Saturday afternoon. It was about 1 p.m. There were around 6 of us, and Pastor himself had 4 kids, so 10 kids altogether, running around this big house, eating jollof rice, eating pizza, drinking soda, lots of soda, playing video games, watching TV, watching Disney Channel, learning all the dance moves. And so after about 2 hours, we got kind of bored staying inside. All of us were around 9 to 12 years old. So we were pretty antsy. And we decided to ask the pastor's wife if we can take a walk outside. And so, it was a safe neighborhood. She agreed. She thought that it would be fine for us to just go play outside, maybe in front of the yard, maybe ride our bikes down the street. So she sent us off to play outside, and the oldest of us was about 12 years old, so told him to keep an eye on us. And so we went outside, and about 5 of us went outside. The rest decided to stay back home. And so one of the young ladies who went outside, one of my friends, as we got outside, we were riding our bikes for a while, and she gathered us all together in a circle and said, "Guys, I saw this really cool game that these kids on this show played, and I think we should play it." She said, "It's called Ding Dong Ditch. And so here's what's going to happen. You all run behind the bush, and I'm going to go run, and I will press the doorbell, the neighbor's doorbell, and I'll run back, and then we all run away really quickly, and we go press the next doorbell." None of us had heard of this kind of game. We did not play that where we're from, but we thought, hey, there's big houses, lots of room to run around. We wanted a little thrill, so we all agreed. And so she went first. She pressed the first doorbell, ran back. We were laughing. Everyone was just laughing because we saw someone peek outside. And so after that died down a bit, we went from the bushes, went to the next house. I pressed the next doorbell. And then we had about 2 other people press other doorbells in the neighborhood. And then we got bored again and decided it was time to go back home. And to continue eating and watching video games, we got back home. There was still food on the table, and the rest of our friends were still home. So we went to join them. We forgot all about our little game, and we proceeded to enjoying the rest of our day before our parents inevitably came to pick us up and send us back home. So after about an hour home, it's about 4 p.m., we hear the doorbell ring. So we think nothing of it. And what was happening at the doorbell was that 2 police officers had come to the pastor's house. They rang the doorbell. "Sir, we've received some complaints from your neighbors that there have been some rowdiness going on in the neighborhood. And we believe that the children or young adults who have been running around are residents of this home." Pastor was very confused. Surely they were wrong. Like the kids from his church, the kids he had pretty much thought of as his own kids, wouldn't do something like that. We wouldn't cause trouble. And we knew better. And so he called his older son. He said, "Hey, son, come here. Were you and your friends running around?" And his son was understandably very nervous and said, yes, Dad, we were. And so Dad said, "All right." Sent him back to us. He apologized to the police officers, said it won't happen again. And they took down some information and they left. So Pastor comes back to us and gives us pretty much a very long speech. He was disappointed. He'd been in this country for 10 years. He'd never had any run-ins with the police officers, with the police. He had never had anything on his record. He was very just distraught and disappointed and pouring out a lot of sentiments that our 9 to 12-year-old minds couldn't comprehend. All we did was play the game that we saw the other white kids on TV playing. And so he talked to his wife, and his wife called all of our parents, and all of our parents quickly, swiftly came to pick us up. Mind you, that was the last time we got to go to Pastor's house for a while. And so each of us went home, and the next day was church. So we got back to church, and in the middle of, at the end of church, we have something called the sheepfold, which is where we have children's church. And so all of us gathered hurriedly after church. We ran there, started to exchange what our various punishments were. My sister and I, we got a lecture from our dad. Apparently we got the least amount of punishment. We got, one of our friends got their video games taken away. Another friend and her brother got pretty nice whooping. And then our last friend, which was the pastor and his brother, pastor's son and his brother, had to report to the library promptly after school every day, got all their after school curricular activities taken away, and received a really long-term punishment. And so we all were carrying a lot of shame and guilt without really understanding why. All we thought we were doing was having fun, and we had no idea that it would result in this much trouble. And so now, as I reflect on it, I'm thinking, what led those people to call the police on young children? Would they have called the police if we were white children? Would the story have been different if they exercised the right to bear arms? That innocent game of ding dong ditch could have easily been ding dong dead.
Oh, Tenny, every time I hear that story, and particularly the way you end it, ding dong ditch could have been ding dong dead if they had decided to exercise their Second Amendment rights. Wow. There was another thing that you foreshadowed, and I thought it was interesting now that I've heard the full story several times. You said they lived in Palos Verdes, and you were like, yeah, it was safe for us. Isn't that interesting? You're like, yeah, it's safe for us. There won't be a problem.
Yeah. Safety is so subjective.
Safety is extremely subjective. And the fact that they would call the police because somebody rang the doorbell, it is all kinds of bizarre. But I was struck on like, oh, it's safe for us. And you're like, wait, what happened? Wow. Here, let's go to I want to go to the virtual pews here. Dr. Shauna Barbie is like, I love Palos Verdes. I know, Dr. Barbie, I like, do you still love it? Like, I was so confused. I was like, wait, what? I'm gonna need you, Dr. Barbie, to cast to like tell me like what's your new version? If we're still with Palos Verdes. Mom, hey mama. Mama's like, wow. Stainless is like, wow, yeah. They're like, Lord, all of this. Stainless is like, it isn't safe. It's so interesting how, if, when we say it's safe, we probably have to say, for who, because even today, let's see, Cindy says, great story, Tenny. Yes, it was a powerful story. Black children playing is a threat. Isn't that odd? Black children playing, laughing, having a good time is a threat. Wow. Yeah, I've as I've resonated, thought about this, this particular story and the fact that you were telling it on the 1-year anniversary of the death of Breonna Taylor. I just thought, still, I am grateful that everything worked out. I am sad that the solution was that y'all couldn't gather anymore at the pastor's house. That just
Yeah.
doesn't seem reasonable for me. Am I missing something?
It wasn't reasonable. And I think that part of that was the guilt and shame that he was carrying from that experience. You know, in Nigeria, everyone's Black. So when you come here, our parents try to do everything they can to not be in trouble for their race, because it just wasn't a factor from where we were coming from. And so for him, and I don't know how he would think about it now, right? Because that was a while ago, before I think that a lot of the adults in my circle got more awareness about race relations in the US. Mm-hmm. I wonder now if he would have reacted that same way to us, if he would have questioned the police officers more, and not automatically taken the side of his neighbors.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. That's a good catch, because one of the things that we have to remember is what growth looks like. And so, yes, in that space, that probably seemed like the proper response. But in today's culture, where we can look and say, wait a minute, these are children and they're playing. They call the police on that. Why are you answering the call because somebody rang a doorbell? Like, really? There are no other crimes in California right now that this is what you have to focus on. You know, is that what we're doing? You know, so yeah, so thank you for saying that. Terry said that there are some games from my childhood that I've never shared with my kids. Things ain't like they used to be. That's true. Like there's some things that I like. You're absolutely right. I don't know that I would recommend playing Ding Dong Dead right now. I don't think that would be a good thing. Jerty was like, my goodness, great story. And what happened to the opportunity to explain that kids are young and silly and meant no harm? Absolutely. Yes, that is such an important thing. Well, Tenny, what I love is that all of you survived. Y'all survived the punishment and the trips to the library. Now listen, I'm just not mad at the library. I'm gonna just put that out there. I just feel like that's I want my children reading more books. I'm good with that. I hate that y'all didn't get to gather in that space. I guess y'all could just only hang out at church. Is that was or at other,
at other people's homes, but
at other people's homes, but not in that home. Wow. Well, listen, the talking to that your parents gave you, they have produced some amazing things. Like, you are doing some phenomenal things. I want to plug Teninlanimi. She has a poetry chapbook that's coming out in May, we're thinking. I think that's the anticipated date. If you will follow her on her social media channels, go to her website, teninla.com, or IG at teninla, Teninla. Then you will be able to see all of the amazing things that are happening with this beautiful person. We have another comment here. Let's see. Reverend Michelle says it also marked for the pastor that he and his family were not in a safe place. That's such a good, thank you for saying that, Reverend Michelle. Are they still in that neighborhood?
They are. Yeah.
Wow. Dr. Barbie, have you changed your vote? I'm waiting on Dr. Barbie to comment if she's still like, yeah, I love Palos Verdes. Stainless is like, nope, I ain't. Stainless is actually in LA, so he's in so she's like, nope, it ain't safe. I won't do it. Okay, thank you for sharing today. I'm gonna put you backstage working. Don't leave me. Don't leave me. Just put you backstage. Wow, people, through many dangerous tools and snares, we have already come, and sometimes not even knowing the dangers that was ahead, and yet here we are. And I always want to hold to that hopeful space. Our practice here at Jesus Jazz and Dessert Wine at Vespers is to do 4 things. The first is to offer a public lament. About a year and a half ago, I got a call I was filming stories in a professional photography studio, professional studio. Graphics were great. Everything looked good. It was just this polished look. And I was super excited to be a part of that. And that also meant that whenever I would post something, it would, basically travel the world. They were like, yo, who is this? Who is this? So I get a call from a person on the other side of the world. And they reach out through Facebook Messenger, and they're like, I have this podcast I want to do. And your brand of Reverend Irreverence, definitely fits. And I want to, feature you as one of my guests. And I'm like, oh my God, that's really cool. Let me think about it for a minute. So I do some digging, and I see that it's a legit podcast, and that, I'm not going to get a call like, asking for a marriage proposal or something crazy like that. It's like, okay, it's all above board. Everything is good. So I do the recording, and it was about an hour and a half long, just talking. And I am who I am. I show up as myself wherever I am. So I don't, need to prep much, because, we're going to be talking about stories and Jesus, and, I'm good on both of those. Like, I got a lot to say in both of those fronts. So talked for about an hour and a half, recorded podcast about an hour and a half. A month later, and then I get and then I'm told that I will get to see the final edit, and and then we'll go from there. A month later, I get a call from the host, and she said that when she played the footage, she had some questions, and she wanted to see if she could do a follow-up meeting with me. And so I was like, okay, so what are your questions? She said, well, my husband and her and her husband pastor a small church in this other part of the world. And she said, well, we're listening, and just had there was just some things that you said. I just kind of wanted to ask you some clarifying questions. I was like, okay. So then we schedule another follow-up meeting. It is an hour. And in this particular follow-up call, she is now telling me that the issue that she's having is with my concept of love. Love was problematic for her. The way that I talked about love, the way that I talked about God is love. She wanted me to throw in some lightning bolts. I'm like all Hosea 2:14. I will allure her into the desert and talk tenderly to her. So I'm just all the time thinking about the wise woman from Tekoa. God doesn't sweep life away. Instead, God devises plans to bring us back when we've been separated. That is my concept of who God is. And so that just did not gel with who she felt like I should be on record talking about God. Fast forward, turns out there was a situation that happened in her church, and it was a man who was, unfaithful to his wife. And the church's response was to say, let's love. Like, I'm not talking make a decision, do what y'all gonna do. Like, what I'm talking about is more of a universal concept. And if you have a particular, plan that you want to do with your church, and this guy and this guy's wife, okay, then do that. Bottom line, she did not release the interview. And I started to think about how I gave 2.5 hours only for her to come back and be mad because I did not align with whatever was going on with her church and their concept of love. So I thought, okay, message to self, be careful about the interviews that you take. So I was doing really good. And then I got another interview request. And this was after I had just completed I'd done a test. I did a sample, a snippet of my upcoming production, Ancient of Ways, for colored girls who've considered Ifa when Jesus came up short. And I sampled the scene between the two main characters, the woman who is a Christian and the man that she meets in the bar, who is a practitioner of the African indigenous religion, the Yoruba Ifa Orisha tradition. So it's a powerful scene. Everybody is loving it. They're like, yo, the tension, the love, the curiosity. We need to see this whole production. And so everybody was really feeling it. One of the critics that was on the panel also had a podcast and said, I need to explore more with you about this whole concept of Christianity and the African Christianity versus the African indigenous religions, as both are practiced by African Americans. I'm like, okay, let's set it up. Let's do it. So we set up the interview, set up the time to record. And during the recording, once again, it's 2.5 hours. It flowed effortlessly because I'm talking about, story. I'm talking about Black people. I'm talking about Jesus. I'm talking, it's I'm talking about this project that I've written. I'm talking about projects that, previous projects that I've written. And like I'm just kind of in my secure lane. The next day, get a thank you text message. Thank you for being a part of it. Everything is good. 2 days after that, though, I get a message saying, I'm in a deep depression because of our interview. What have I done now? And so apparently with this person, what I did was I talked about, it was, I've done a lot of things. And, the interview was like, I'm never going to be able to catch up to you. I feel so horrible about myself. And I'm sitting there like, well, number one, I'm 20 years older than you. So I promise you, you got time. So I'm confused about like what all is going on. But I really lamented that in 2 cases where my intentions were to show up in the world as I am, as Sojourner Truth says, I'm going to be who I was meant to be. Thank God for making me whole. And so in my wholeness, I show up without apology, without exception. And I just am. And in both instances, it created a problem for these 2 people. And the one that just recently happened, it was really sad because I didn't know what I was dealing with, and I didn't know what I had done. I didn't know how to solve for it. But here's my prophetic hope. Isaiah 50 verse 4 says, the sovereign Lord gives me her words of wisdom so that I know how to comfort the weary. Morning by morning, she awakens me and opens my understanding to her will. What I wanted in both of those spaces was to make a decision to be interviewed, to have the interview go viral, for everybody to blow up because the information that I offered was solid, the questions that they offered was solid, and everybody live happily ever after. There is no lack, there's no scarcity, there is more than enough for all of us. God owns it all. There is abundance in the earth. That's what I wanted. Neither time did that happen. Both times I was somehow the culprit, in the situation. And so all I was doing was practicing fidelity to who I am, to what I know, to my understanding of God's will, and offering the words of wisdom that God has given me to comfort the weary. I felt like those marching orders were really easy. What I found was that they were not for them. But that is my prophetic hope. My prophetic hope is that as you meet people who speak a good word, even if it, for whatever reason, doesn't align with what you're feeling at that point, take some time to think about why you would find love problematic and why you would feel like it is prudent to compare what you've done with someone who is 20 years older or who is given, in both instances, I've given my time and I've given like 2.5 hours to both of them. My prophetic hope is that as you meet people who are giving you the space, their time, their energy, that you would receive it graciously, that you would receive it warmly, and that you would know that there are no accidents. I feel like there are angels that dot all of our paths. And so just be open and be, hopeful for that. If you, like when you encounter that. The other prophetic hope, though, is this. For those who have amazing gifts, insights, you're walking in wholeness and you want to share it, may we be wise in how we use our time. May we surround ourselves with people who are going to help us think about the best way for all of us to experience the abundance that's already here. Maybe that means that I don't ever again do 2.5 hours unless I know you like personally. Everybody else, like you get 30, 45 minutes tops. And, then you just gonna have to go with what we come up with or not. So I'm learning that I have to set some boundaries, but all is not lost. And I don't think the solution is to say like, oh, okay, yeah, no, just forget them and don't ever do it again. And don't ever talk with, it's like, that's not it. There is no lack. There's so many amazing things that are happening. So make yourself available. All right. My energizing memory. Here's a picture of this time last year. We were just going into shelter in place. I have my journal there. That is my copy of Audre Lorde's essays, A Sister Outsider. And then I was actually cooking breakfast because I'm like, can't nobody go nowhere, so I got time. Everything was super leisure. So that's avocado on those eggs and raw carrots. And I would sit on the deck or I would go to the museum, and it was a beautiful time. I am finding now that as things are opening up, we are starting to get that hurried, rushed pace again. I hope that we will take the lessons that we learned in the pandemic, the things that were good, and we would continue those practices. Rest, slowing down, being leisure, cooking. Good practices. Hold on to those practices that served you well, that served us well. Let's hold on to them. And finally, giving. So when we talk about giving here, Jesus, Jazz, and Dessert Wine, we are not just talking about giving money. In fact, our primary sources of giving feels like it's everything but money. Give grace, give space, give thanks, give support to somebody that you know is like, listen, I just need a kind word. I need an ear. Give them that support. Let that count towards your giving. Give do-overs. Somebody didn't do it right the first time and they're like, yo, I need to come back and try to repair that. Make room for the do-over. Give do-overs. Give opportunities if you are in that place. And then give money as well. But there are so many different ways that we can practice giving. And I pray that you are finding new and creative ways to give. There is no lack. There is no scarcity. There is abundance. And let's just walk in the fullness of that, in the reality of that, as all of those things and everything that we need is materializing and is doing it right on time. So let us give a good word and give hope and give assurances that God is with us and all is well. All right. Before we close out, let me go here to the virtual pew. And let's see. Shauna says, I still do, but it represents every town. I hate the system of supremacy. Okay, fair, Dr. Barbie. Absolutely fair comment. Okay, Stainless. Okay, do you see what he did with your name? Teninlanimi? How he broke it down. He was the one that was correcting me on it. Jerty is like, we've been taught to behave well around white people, but they can behave badly around us. And we have to tolerate theirs. No, we don't either. We ain't tolerating none of that foolishness. And I got a story about that too. Stay tuned. Stainless is like, haha, I'm going to be who I'm meant to be. Absolutely. Yes, that's Sojourner Truth. And I'm co-opting her deal. No coincidences in the kingdom. Absolutely. You are absolutely right. Dr. Lamb, the people who are inspiring me to show up as I am. Audre Lorde, Ida B. Wells, Alexis Brown. Okay, so see how I hit that note? It was a beautiful note when I hit it, Dr. Lamb, because like that was such a powerful comment. I think I'm gonna print that on a t-shirt. I get to have my name with these two amazing icons. Be yourself. Everyone else is taken. Absolutely, Mama. Yes, Cindy agrees. So yes, Miss Emma. Finding creative ways to give. Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. I just don't want us to be so stuck on the idea that the only way to give is money. Not true. Well, next week we have Trina Francis. And her story, I actually produced a show live and she told that story. And so it is going to be really interesting to see how we translate her story in the virtual universe. But it is profound, especially for my teachers, especially for anyone who is in the school system. And as a teacher, you have a child, you're an administrator, you definitely want to hear Trina's story. It is so powerful. I really can't, I don't want to give any of it away. I just want you to tune back in next Saturday, 5:30 p.m. EST, where Trina will lead us. She'll be our featured storyteller. Okay. All right. Well, if all minds are clear, our blessing and our sending. I often talk about love as a commandment. It is not an option. And I often pray that love would, that we would allow love to lead us towards creative solutions. But in honor of the Sojourner Truth Traveling Stole, I would like to read you this prayer that is in recognition of the National African American Clergy Women's Awareness Month. And it says this: may you develop the strength to hear truth when misinformation is more comfortable. May you increase the courage to speak truth in the middle of trouble. May you master the faith to become truth as you fully express your divine mission on earth. Ashe, Selah, so be it. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week.
My funny Valentine, sweet comet Valentine.